Welcome to TWIG, your weekly, geekly, family-friendly news show that tackles everything from Minecraft changing up their system to Apple and PlayStation showcasing their tech with some games in between. I am Nerd Pastor Nate. I'm really the pastor of Checkpoint Church, a church online really designed with nerds, geeks, and gamers in mind. If you were listening on the podcast version of the show, be sure to go and give us a good review. Click that like button if you're over on YouTube, or come and listen live on Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. As always, we're going to be starting this one with our What Have You Been Watching, Playing, and Reading. We're going to get live answers from folks watching live on Twitch. If you're watching after the fact, then I would encourage you also to let us know down below. And I'm going to let our level 2 guest introduce themselves and tell us what they have been watching, playing, and reading. So take it away, my friend.
So, hey guys, I'm Phoenix. I'm around the server. Occasionally I do my best. I'm working a lot. So that's a lot of the times when I answer these questions. And this week I have been watching football, catching up with my fantasy football league with some of my friends. I started a new series on Hulu called English Teacher. And then next week, when my wife and I go on vacation in Myrtle Beach, we're going to go watch Beetlejuice. And then for reading, I have been reading the book of the month, Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. And then I'm fixing to pick up 1984 again. And then for playing, my usual rotation of GTA 5, Fortnite, and then the occasional Minecraft with friends as well.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm working my way through Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, and I am quite enjoying it. I think it's been good so far. It's good old school Americana kind of style reading, and I just got to what I think is going to be the actual like plot, and I'm excited for where it goes from here and what we get from this point on. But definitely right there with you with that one. I have been watching our anime of the month, which is Fruits Basket, the remake. I've been super enjoying getting into that. It's my first watch of a pretty famous anime from a long time. I've also been taking the advantage of not having many anime that I'm watching right now to get through my 1001 movies to watch before you die list, two of which I've gotten through this week. The first is the Buster Keaton 1920s film, The General, which I did not realize was propaganda. So that was an interesting experience to learn actively. Like, this very famous movie just so happens to maybe not be the coolest, chillest movie ever. And I didn't know that was a thing. So that was interesting to learn. The scenes were pretty amazing, and the stuff that they brought about was pretty incredible. And then I also watched a Werner Herzog film that is very well regarded, Aguirre, Wrath of God. I did not get it. I maybe I'll watch it again some other time, but especially after seeing The General and seeing something that was much, much older and honestly looked better, I was just unimpressed. Like, I feel like everybody in the reviews on Letterboxd was like, a true feat of filmmaking. And I was like, I guess. Like, I feel like I saw this in 2006 on YouTube, so I don't know if this is actually the finest thing we've ever seen, but maybe that is going to get me absolutely lambasted online. So alas, that's where I'm at with 1001. I've been playing our game of the month for Button Bash Brigade, Midnight Ramen, Zenless Zone Zero, keeping up with my daily chores, and then logging so many hours in Fields of Mystria. I have maxed out almost everything. I have almost expended the full early access. I'm now getting into the point that I am breeding the animals to get the unique rare colors. So I'm in deep to Fields of Mystria, and I think I'm almost done because I feel like it's starting to wane a bit. I have a feeling I'm going to get to fall, so I'm on my second year. I didn't farm at all the first year until winter, so I'm going to get all the crops for spring, summer, and fall, and then I'm probably out. So that could potentially be like another 10 hours or something, so that will be an interesting thing to find. And as I mentioned, reading through Heaven and Earth as well, Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. Let's see what's going on in the chat. We have Wise and Lemur who started Spiritfarer. Oh boy, hope you have your tissues because the tiers are going to be coming with that game. Really exceptional stuff there. DGC has been watching Fruits Basket as well. Nerdy Sermon streams in YouTube, playing Midnight Ramen. Ace Attorney Investigations. I'm so excited for you. Tough it out through that first game because the second game is absolutely worth it. And Honkai Star Rail, reading Solo Leveling, Ragnarok, fanfiction, and the Bible. Let's see. Joanna is here. I've been watching Fruits Basket, started Disability in the Church, and have been playing Undertale, which I'm super geeked out about. DB has been rewatching Gravity Falls, playing Roblox Pressure, and reading The Wild Robot. Kyoti has been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! PS4, the one-player game, reading Witcher fanfiction, and not really watching much of anything. Sugar Haiku is also not watching anything other than random YouTube and football, playing Hogwarts Legacy and DK Tropical Freeze, and reading the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store as well. So we got lots of folks that are picking up this month's book club. That makes me glad. If you ever want to join us for any of those things, exclamation point Discord in the chat. We have a book, an anime, and a game that we play together every single month, and we would love to welcome you into the fold and have your voice in those spaces as well. With that, we're going to get into some of our news for the night. The first one is the Apple iPhone 16 showcase just happened, and we got a couple of reveals, but never too much nowadays. I can remember, I'm not really the person to be talking about this because I'm really not an Apple fanboy anymore, but I do remember in the golden days of the iPhone, whenever September was kind of a set apart holy month. It was when everybody was excited for what Apple was going to do next, and in the past couple of years, it's kind of just become boilerplate and doing more of the same. And this was pretty similar. The iPhone 16 did get revealed. Of course, now we have the USB-C being the normative technology. Got the next level chip with the A18 chip, mostly so that it can power all of the new Apple Intelligence AI stuff that they're wanting to do. They also added an action button. So this is what iPhone almost always does. They added the action button to the iPhone Pro 15, and now everybody gets the action button. So even on the base model, you're going to get the third button on the side, which is what we've had in Android world for quite a while. But what we don't have in Android world that I think is super cool, if they use it right, is they have a haptic sensor. So if you're thinking of a phone, right, like normal, you have your phone. This is Android, so, imagine it's not. You got the two buttons for the Apple, and then you've got the one button on the side that they've been doing. Down below this one button, they've now got a haptic sensor. So think of like trackpad, kind of your stereotypical trackpad that is clickable, that does have some motion to it, but is mostly just there to get the like back and forth sensation. They're trying to recreate the like camera experience, the click of the camera with the haptic sensor. So I think, that's not the most innovative thing, but it is something that iPhone has that Android does not have. So good on Apple. I love to hear it. I hope that it works really well, and I hope that they do a ton of things with it. But it is what it is. Everything else is pretty much identical, with the exception being that haptic sensor. The AirPods did get an update, which is a big deal. AirPods 4 got USB-C, so now the suite has all got USB-C. The AirPods Pro Max also got its first update in like a decade. I don't think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was their first one in a long time. They didn't change really anything except for it's also USB-C now. And then the Apple Watch, nothing too fancy, just a thinner, larger screen. So that's all of the Apple news that came out of this one. Did you have any thoughts on this, Phoenix? Are you an Apple person, or did this excite you?
My current phone is actually the 15 Pro Max. The whole reason that I upgraded was the fact that with the 15 Pro Max, they added like Resident Evil 4, I think, natively, as well as Resident Evil Village natively. And I know they're bringing in one of the Division games over as well. And so I had the 15 Plus, but I didn't like the fact that I wouldn't have been able to play those games because of whatever chip. I think it was the A17 Pro. And I think it's interesting them adding the haptic sensor for the camera. I've been using, like I said, the 15 Pro Max, and I have the action button, and it does a lot, but I wish it did more because all you can really do is set it up to do one thing. You can't double click and do, several different things, which bothers me slightly, but it is convenient if I'm like doing dishes and I want to skip my song. I have it set up to where I can just do that. With them switching over to USB-C, that's a lot more convenient because so many devices are now USB-C. It just sucks because if my wife wants to use my phone charger, she can't because she still has a 14 Pro Max, which has the Lightning port still.
Right.
So
Yeah,
overall, I think it's good, but
it's Apple, so it's always going to be safe. Like you're going to get
yeah.
safe steps forward. I think, like I said, that's why I'm excited about the sensor, is that at least they made a pretty bold jump. I think that's a leap. And could it jump the shark? Sure, it could jump the shark, but at least they're trying something. I love that Apple's actually experimenting, and not just with AI. Like everybody's going to experiment with AI this year, but I want Apple tech to continue to leap forward. Like I remember the like top bar of the MacBooks for a while that they did. I don't know if that's still a thing, but whenever they tried that, I was like, nice, Apple. Like let's see some innovation and some interesting stuff, because it feels like so often they're so safe. So top bar is
There was
gone.
also,
I mean, and the haptic sensor probably won't be on the next phone. Like this is probably just a one-time experiment, but at least they're experimenting. I'll take it.
Yeah, there was also, I know, a new color introduced as well. It's like desert
Always.
titanium or something like that. And I'm not
Yes.
gonna lie, I think I like that color better than my current iPhone. I have the blue one, and I don't know, just that desert color, it just looks very, very sleek.
Yep. They're continuing to dive deep into the titanium rabbit hole that they're obsessed with right now. And so the Apple Watch is titanium. They're continuing that. And then the Pro or the Max or whatever in the world, the Apple Pro is going to be getting the titanium coating as well. Whereas the base model is just going to be many different colors, which they did add a new color, one of which was indigo, which I actually thought was a really nice color for an iPhone. That's the one pictured there. I think it's pretty nice. Alas, nothing will make me jump back to Apple, but I do always like learning about them and seeing what they're doing. And I keep up well, even if I am a hater. I want to know what's going on in their world. So this was a pretty tame showcase, but not every September showcase is going to be a big one. And they kind of had their really big announcement with the AI Apple Intelligence stuff a couple months ago. So that was their big one. And so yeah, that was the WWDC, I think, event. The
Yeah, with
interesting thing
iOS
about
15.
the interesting thing about that is that I'm pretty sure the AI stuff doesn't launch until November. It may even be past that. And so if you order this phone with Apple Intelligence chip, power that is needing the chip, you're actually not going to get any of those features day one. You won't get any of those Apple Intelligence features that you need the A18 chip for until a couple months down the line. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting twist of like, is it worth it to get it now? Probably not.
Well,
This isn't going to be the one that you're rushing to.
I do know with the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max, I know that they were introducing a lot of those AI features to those as well. I
Mm-hmm.
know not necessarily all of them, but most of the features that are coming with the 16 are already on the 15 Pro Max.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'd say it'd almost be worth it just to get the 15 Pro Max
Yep.
if you're gonna, because at that point, like they're basically the same phone. The only difference is the chip, and even then, you're getting most of the same features. So
Yep. Yep. It'll be very interesting. Very interesting to see what this actually does with the Apple market. If people just jump on to the next one as they always do, or if it finally slows down some of the purchasing. I feel like Verizon is my carrier, and they got me on that like cycle of every 2 years that I am trying my best to break. Of like, I don't need a new phone every 2 years. I don't want a phone every 2 years. So let me just figure out how to slow down that process. So maybe that's happening in the Apple world as well. But I can definitely remember when it was like, nope, as soon as the new phone comes out, I'm getting the new one. And that's not me. And I don't think it should be any of us. It's just kind of
yeah.
the way they wanted to train us to buy the next great thing. Maybe we just don't need phones that often. But this has been Apple. Do let us know your thoughts about the 16 and if you plan on getting it, if you're curious about it, if it was a letdown, or if you are like me, at least interested and curious about the fact that they're doing something new with that little haptic sensor. I think a trackpad is a fun thing. I do think it's in a weird spot and might get annoying, but that's just, the hater in me. We'll see where it goes. With that, we're going to get into our next one, which is a bit of a new era for the world of Minecraft.
So Minecraft is shaking things up after player backlash led to the end of its annual mob vote, where fans chose the next creature to be added to the game. Instead of one big update each year, Mojang will now release smaller, more frequent updates to keep the game fresh and responsive to players' feedback. Minecraft Live, the game's yearly news event, will also be split into multiple smaller broadcasts. Mojang is focusing on making impactful updates that improve gameplay across all platforms, including the Nintendo Switch and upcoming PlayStation 5 version, ensuring Minecraft continues to connect and inspire players worldwide.
Yeah. Folks know that I'm not really like I learned about Minecraft when Checkpoint started. So I knew about it, but like I actually started playing it and learning things about it 4 years ago. So I know very little about the world of Minecraft, but I do seem to understand as an outsider looking into this world that this mob vote was a pretty big deal. I remember people got pretty hyped about it every single year. And they were anticipating it. So it is interesting to see Minecraft taking a different sort of step into how they build community, because I feel like they do community really well. And I wonder if this is a backslide or if this is a listening to the players well, because I could see it being either or.
Yeah, I'd say the problem more lies on the fact that Bedrock and Java are such different games.
Hmm.
Like you can't get everything on Bedrock that you can get on Java, and same the other way around. Java's a little easier, I'd say, to manage because you can download different mod packs and skins are free, whereas Bedrock version skins are not free and you have to pay for them. So
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
say it's
I
kind of a win-lose situation.
I can remember that always drove me crazy. Anytime
Yeah.
we would like talk about our realm or talk about joining the checkpoint Minecraft, whatever, and everybody would be like, "Well, Java or Bedrock," and I'd be like, "That doesn't mean anything. Those are not words that I know. You're just saying things, and I don't know the answer to them." And so I'd have to turn to somebody, one of our resident Minecraft people, and be like, "What are we on? What are we using? I don't know." It does feel like with one of the biggest games ever made by one of the tech industry leaders, that surely we'd figure out some way around this by now. The cross compatibility is just, it's got to happen. I understand that there's like a player base and there is an innate built-in thing, but I would love to have heard that news as well. Is like, not only are we doing this, we're also going to move into the future, and now Minecraft, Java, and Bedrock are going to be the same thing, and you just get what you get, and that would be nice. But I don't foresee
Yeah.
that happening.
I'd say they're getting closer with the fact that I'm pretty sure now when you buy one of the editions, at least on computer, you get both.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, they're getting closer. It's not 100% there yet, but I think it'll eventually get there. Hopefully, we can hope and dream. But
Very good. Well, we'll see if this has any backlash from the removing of the mob vote, or if it is a needed new era that Minecraft fans are like, good, it was time for us to be done with that, and now we'll get some more updates and more frequent things added into this game that is amazingly still trucking along. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I just think it's incredible the work that they've done to keep it alive as long as they have, and innovate, and not just let it be the same thing, but instead let it be something new with each new iteration. Pretty cool stuff. Next up, we're going to get into some more technical aspects, and this is the PS5 Pro. So this morning, we got the PlayStation 5 Pro Technical Showcase hosted by Mike Cerny. And the kind of presentation began with an explanation of what was actually changing from the PS5 to the PS5 Pro. And Mark Cerny made it their big three: larger GPU, advanced ray tracing, and AI driven upscaling. Those were the big three things that he wanted to highlight. Larger GPU, of course, just means you can play better, faster, harder, stronger, right? Like you can do all of it more with the larger GPU. The advanced ray tracing continues to just make games look more and more beautiful. However, at this point, we have gotten to such advanced details in games that it's really hard to tell. Like at one point during the presentation, he brings up like Spider-Man, and he has Spider-Man on the left on the PS5 and Spider-Man on the right on the PS5 Pro. And he was like, "Can't you see the difference?" And I was like, "Not really." You can sort of see the leaves a little clearer, I guess, but it's really not, I don't know. It's not that much of a difference. And I've never been, I mean, I play on my phone, like I don't really care about that kind of thing. And I certainly don't notice it without intentionally looking with a magnifying glass. And then the other one was AI driven upscaling, which I think, if I understood this correctly, had a lot more to do with PS4 games. And so this just means that now they have AI fed into their system that will be working on making older games look even better on the PS5. So I don't think it's like the old-ish games. I don't think it's like PS3 and before, but PS4 games are going to look even more like a PS5 game than they ever have at any other point with this. So those are the big three that he pitched as being exciting, and it is coming out on November 7th. Now, the real kicker was the price, and this is what everybody's talking about and everybody is very upset about, and I believe rightfully so. The price point for the PS5 Pro, first we should say the PS5 itself, right, was $450, $500, now down to $350, $400, depending on disc drive or digital. The original PS4 launched at $400. This one going to be $700 for the PS5 Pro. It does not come with a disk drive. The disk drive is an extra $80 on top of that. So if you want the PS5 Pro with disk drive, $780. It also does not come with a vertical stand, which is bonkers to me. Just one more thing. Like, it's already an insanely expensive thing, and then they don't even give you the vertical stand that did come stock with the PS5 standard. So really, really strange choice, really expensive price. Just to give you a like scale of this again, is like $700 is so much money. The PS4 launched $400, and then the PS4 Pro launched at $400. it launched at the exact same price as the original PS4 because it was that many years later. And so they marked down the PS4, and the PS4 Pro was the launching price of the original PS4 because it had been years and because of the fact that they really weren't selling anything too different. I think it is so absurd to have a $200 increase from your original asking price for the PS5, not to mention now that it's been marked down significantly. It just doesn't even make sense to me. I don't think anybody is going to be happy about this. If I could be honest, I recall the days of the PS3 and the flop that was the PS3. And I think that if the PS5 was not already a success, then this wouldn't be a failed console by this choice alone. I think the PS5 Pro is unquestionably going to be a failed console. It just can't work for that price point. It is exactly the same situation as what happened to the incredibly overpriced launch date PS3. Any thoughts on this one from you, Phoenix?
I'd say if you're going to pay $700 to get a console that really doesn't do much more, you might as well get a low budget gaming PC.
Right.
I feel like you'd be able to do way more that way. The fact that it doesn't come with a disk drive and you got to pay $20 for a stand, I mean, at that point, it basically becomes like an $800 console.
Yep.
And you can get a mid range to, low range gaming PC for, like $500, $600.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, I think they're trying to keep up with Xbox because I know that Xbox announced the new Series X and it's, I think, priced about the same. I think it's like $600. But so I'd say they're trying to keep up with that. But the thing is, I'm pretty sure the new Series X has a disk drive. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very steep price. I don't think it'll be worth it.
Well, and especially whenever you start to look at the games. I make the
Yeah.
same argument about Xbox, however, because I think that if you're going to have an Xbox, you might as well have a PC because you can literally play all the same games. But even if you're going to say, like, well, exclusives, how many? How many exclusives are $700 worth? Because I don't think
Yeah.
there's enough. And I love the PlayStation games that I love. I think they're great. Astro Bot is one that has, been exceptional. You're gonna go back and play the any Spider-Man, any of those kind of games, like they are exceptional games. But how many are there to warrant a $700 price tag?
Well, and the fact that those games are also coming to PC. Like, I'm pretty sure Spider-Man and God of War both are on PC.
Right.
So it's like, it doesn't seem worth it. What I can say for Xbox, I have the Series S currently, and that was one of the best purchases I could have made because right after they released that, it seems like they slowed down all of the Xbox Ones tremendously. And so there was a massive difference between me getting a Series S when they released, and I got them like a year after they released. So I only paid like $200 for it, I think. So that made it worth it. But yeah, $700, that's insane.
So I looked it up. The new console Series X and S looks like the 2 terabyte is the $600. So I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure that this PS5 is probably 1 terabyte if I had to guess. I sure hope it is
crazy.
with the Pro Series, but even then, the digital 1 terabyte Series X is 450. So
That's another thing that I think is kind of dumb. Them releasing an all digital Series X when the Series S exists
right,
and does most of the same things. I don't know. It's
yeah.
just all a money grab at this point.
Consoles are ultimately what you're going to be a console person if you're going to be a console person, but it's like it really doesn't make sense to have a console unless you have a Nintendo because they're
Yeah.
the only ones still like requiring it. I mean, you could argue it with PS5 exclusives, but more and more of them are coming to PC, as you said. And then it's like there's just simply not enough. And Xbox, there's really no excuse. The only reason to
No.
have an Xbox is that you want an Xbox. There's no like
Yeah.
need for it. The console wars are kind of dead, and PC won and just kind of made it that if you want to have the best experience for the expensive price point that they're just going to have to get to, PCs are just going to do just as fine. So it ultimately becomes a question of like, what do you want? If you want to just play on your TV and plug in a game and queue it up and do your thing, then hey, a console is going to be a great choice. But if you're somebody that takes gaming seriously and has your home set up at your desk and all that kind of stuff, then you're probably just going to use a PC. It just makes more sense. But it'll be interesting to see. I don't foresee, like I said, I don't foresee the Pro doing well. We'll see. Maybe it'll do better than I'm expecting, but I think that with this price point, we are going to see a redo of the PS3 fiasco, and nobody's going to buy it. People already didn't like the original PS5 price and how hard it was to find, although the console was exceptionally good. So maybe this one will also be exceptionally good, but none of those things were quite enough to drive me towards that, to say the least. With that, we are going to move into our next segment of our show, which is our main segment, our big bulk of the show. And I mentioned a little bit earlier about Astro Bot. And so we're actually going to be talking about nostalgia today. We're going to be diving into something that just seems to be popping up everywhere. We've seen it in games and movies and TV shows. We've all felt it. We've all had it in our lives. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling that hits whenever you hear like the opening of a game that you haven't touched maybe in years or haven't even touched since you were a kid. And this year, we've had Astro Bot for the PS5 that has done an exceptional job at touching on nostalgia. If you haven't had a chance to play it yet, you are a robot rescuing all of your little friends, Pikmin style, and all of the robots around you, not all of them, but some of the robots around you are styled to classic PlayStation characters. And so there's a lot of nostalgia, especially for like Ape Escape, which is a game we haven't seen brought back into the zeitgeist in quite a while. I saw Parappa the Rappa in one of them, and so that's all I'm going to spoil. But that's just an example of some of the nostalgia that this game is touching on, and it's doing really well because this game is being seriously considered as a GOTY. Not because of this alone, it's also an exceptional game, but the nostalgia factor is certainly something. And then we also have X-Men 97 that came out earlier in this year that tapped in perfectly to the 90s vibe of the X-Men TV shows and continued on from there, bringing back all of those vibes. And so for tonight, I wanted to talk through a little bit about nostalgia and just, work through some of the things that we feel, the good, the bad, and the ugly whenever it comes to our feelings of nostalgia. So I think one good thing about nostalgia is that it connects us to ourselves, connects us deeper to ourselves. There's a great Vsauce video on our relationship with ourselves and nostalgia. It also connects us to the communities around us. So we'll start with the good stuff. Nostalgia connects us to our past. I mentioned Astro Bot just a second ago. It's packed with callbacks to classic games, and then suddenly you're in this headspace of being a kid. I know for me, I have this experience with Harvest Moon in particular, A Wonderful Life, because I can remember me and my best friend growing up would play that game until we would fall asleep. He would come over for a sleepover, we'd play with Legos, we'd do whatever, and then we would play Harvest Moon. And there was one story that we actually have where he fell asleep and was still playing the game, like was still moving around the farm as he was sleeping. So what is one thing for you? This is both for Phoenix and also for anybody in the chat. What's one thing that hits you right in the nostalgia? Like what's something that really brings up those feelings, those warm and fuzzies?
So I'd say with Astrobot specifically, I haven't played it personally, but I was looking at like people talking about it online, and it just made me think of back when I was like 12 and 13, getting a brand new video game and going home and playing it, and just the feeling of hearing, the menu music for the first time and going through the story for the first time. And I can remember playing things like Kingdom Hearts for the first time. And one of the biggest things that I can say has stuck with me with Kingdom Hearts specifically has been music. I can remember playing the original God of War games for the first time, as well as Devil May Cry series. And just these feelings, it really takes me back to when I was that young, and I don't know. I'd say music and playing retro games kind of just hits me there a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I think it's there's an element of like reliving it for ourselves, but then kind of like I mentioned with my buddy, there's also like the connections that we make. I think of like schoolyard talk about whatever anime was on, at the time. We actually just had a conversation the other day, and somebody brought me back because they mentioned Jetix. I don't know if anybody remembers Jetix, but that was like a whole network of TV shows, I think on Disney, I'm pretty sure. But I just was like immediately brought back into that, and it's because of the community that was around it, the people that know it. And so now whenever I experience nostalgia, I find that a lot of it is because we're remembering things and we're sharing together and we're growing deeper with one another because of the memories that we share in community. So do you think that that is true? Does nostalgia make us feel connected to one another?
I'd say so. I know for me personally, that's something that I've noticed, at least within the checkpoint community, is, it's something that kind of brings us all together. We were all at different points, in our lives when these things that we're seeing, come back around now, like with certain TV shows and movies and games, X-Men, that, coming out and all of that. I'd say it brings us closer as a community and helps us to realize that, we share a lot of the same a lot of the same, interests. And even if we're all completely different people, I feel like shows and games like that just kind of bring us together for good.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. So DGC is with me. Remembers some Jet X. Very good. I'm going to look at the chat real quick. We also see DGC mentioned Zelda and Kingdom Hearts staying with you as well, echoing you there. And Sugar Haiku has a nostalgia trip with vintage strawberry shortcake and Mario and retro Final Fantasy. Very nice. Lots of classics in there. I do think, and this is something that we've also seen with Astro Bot, and so we'll turn it to we said the good, this is the bad. I think the nostalgia sometimes has a dark side. I think there's a flip side of nostalgia that can trap us in the past, and we start thinking things were so much better back then. And I've certainly been guilty of that, and I've heard a lot of that recently with this game in particular. In particular, because it is a platformer, and N64, right, was a classic era of platforming, and so a lot of people are like, oh, they just don't make games like this anymore. They just don't do it like they used to. But I personally am not so convinced that that is actually true. I don't think necessarily that we're all stuck in the past, that we're unable to relive the glory days. I think we've just changed, and games have changed, and the way we experience games have changed. But nonetheless, that doesn't make it any less vital that we continue experiencing good stories, because we're still building in those new moments. So what do you think about that? Do you think we're too wrapped up in those good old glory days?
I wouldn't say we're too wrapped up. I'd say we can get that way occasionally, but I know for me, I have to realize that, the past is the past. And if we didn't have those things in the past, we wouldn't have the advancements we do now. We wouldn't have, insane looking games that look super realistic if we didn't have the past. But if we stay in that mindset of the past, we can't, move forward with our lives. We can't grow like we should if we're just focused on how things used to be instead of how things are now and how things will continue to grow and change.
Mm. Yeah. But it is tricky. It's tricky because we can be so comforting, and we just kind of are lost in the romanticization of the thing that we sort of lose a bit of the reality of what we're actually experiencing, and we start to lose focus on what's actually happening around us and what we're currently experiencing, which is the more important thing, that we can experience it together. So I think it's great whenever a game like Astro Bot comes out and does mix in the old with the new, so that we still have this next level, next gen gaming experience, but we're getting the nostalgia trip right alongside it. I think that's fantastic, and does a really good job of bringing that out in a new way, in a new light, and in a way that we can experience again without dwelling in anything that once existed. So that's the good, that's the bad. I think one of the ugly sides of nostalgia can be sometimes over romanticizing it. Like, we think about these shows that are so perfect, or these games that are so perfect, and we tend to forget about maybe the not so great parts, or the things that we would disagree with now, or things that might make us uncomfortable now. I can't tell you how many like 90s kids shows I have tried to show to like Nora, who is 5, and not realizing what used to pass for a G-rated movie. Like, it can get pretty awkward pretty fast if we over romanticize it. So does that ever happen? Do you ever catch yourself over romanticizing some part of the past, or a game or series or anything?
I know I do with like movies and music because one of my biggest things is like preserving all types of media, good and bad. And I'd say there's sometimes I get caught up with like music and, just listening to certain kinds of music. I think to myself, man, they don't make music like this anymore. But then I'm like, that's not a great mindset to have, because it's not that it's good or bad. It's just it's different. And I think people don't like change. And so when there's that change there, people view it as bad. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that there's this change. It's just different than what we're used to. And we get so used to being in this comfort zone. When we're, taken out of that comfort zone, we don't like it.
Yeah. 100%. And if something is questioned or brought up about it, that makes us feel like we aren't being legitimized. And I think that's a part of what makes it so personal. And that's why I started with saying that I think that it has so much to do with ourselves, and it also has so much to do with the community that we relate to. And there's lots of good. There's lots of wonderful things to remember. So I'm not going to like knock on nostalgia and say it's not something wonderful. This is just analyzing it for the full swath as much as we can. But I do think it's important nonetheless to consider, from our perspective as Checkpoint, we are really a church, and we have our rules to do good, do no harm, and to strive to grow. So I think that this could be an element of growing. This could be an element of taking our nostalgia with us and moving forward. I think it was DGC who said that. Nothing wrong with nostalgia. We should always be striving to move forward. So exactly. So with that, how? How do we move forward? What is the key to using nostalgia as a springboard? Not just something that we're revisiting in and staying in, but instead that we bring along with us and help us grow. So what do you think? What's one way that people can enjoy nostalgia without getting stuck in it?
It kind of goes back to one of my previous answers, just realizing that, those things are in the past. You can't change those things now, and you can try to bring them back, but it's not going to be the same as, like it was when it was released or when we watched it when we were younger or whatever. And I think being in a community like Checkpoint helps because we're able to talk about those feelings in a safe setting, and those feelings are going to be validated, but also helps us to work through those issues that we're having, whether it be, man, this show doesn't hit the same, or this song isn't the same as it used to be. Well, of course it's not, because times have changed. And so I'd say, talking about these things and going back and watching them in a mindset of things are different now and that's okay is kind of how we need to go into, watching new things and playing new games and all of that.
I think the most important thing to remember is that nostalgia is ultimately a thing that happens to us and through us. It is a reminder of something. It's something that we can utilize as a tool that we can utilize to not just remind us of the past, to not just make us aware, as Quixote said, to acknowledge some of the past and some of the darker spots there, but also to inspire us to create and to innovate and to grow as people. And so, like with Astro Bot, it's not just about callbacks. It's not just about flashing back to the past, but instead showing us that new experiences are possible, that new experiences are fulfilling, and that we can enjoy these past things while also living in fully to where we are. And the same with X-Men 97. We can write love letters to the past with new stories to tell and new characters to present and new ways of presenting those characters. So as we wrap up this show, I want to encourage you to keep on playing and watching and creating new memories. We love stories here at Checkpoint. We love video games and anime and movies and all that sort of stuff. And so remember that nothing is really in the past. They're happening right now. And so when we get to experience those things again, we're making new memories with new people in new environments and continuing to enjoy that nostalgia while living today. So with that, let's move in to our next segment of the show, which is where we will actually take a little nostalgic trip into the past with
At this point in nerd history.
That's right. It is time for At This Point in Nerd History. We're going to look at all of the games, movies, TV show, random things that happened on September 10th throughout time and space. That is the day that we are streaming this. We'll start with some games that came out on this day. In 2021, WarioWare Get It Together was dropped over on, I believe, the Switch. 2019, Blasphemous, an indie game that nobody expected to do as well as it did, and that did take a little bit of time to pick up, but we've since gotten a sequel. In 2012, a truly infamous cult classic, Lisa the First, was released. 2001, Advance Wars was released in the US a day before, of course, tomorrow, where we remember 9/11. This prevented the game from being released in Japan for quite a few years. 1999, Duke Nukem for the Game Boy Color was released, which I learned was a thing. I did not know that Duke Nukem had a Game Boy Color entry, but now I do. 1998, a true classic, Gex Enter the Gecko was released. And in 1993, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was released on the Super Famicom in Japan. Any of those do anything for you, Phoenix? Any of those games get your attention?
Gex Enter the Gecko. I don't know why I suddenly remember this. I can remember going over to my grandma's house. I don't remember how old I was, and that was one of the games that she had. She didn't have very many, but she had a few, and I can just remember very vaguely playing that game. So,
Yep. It's one of those. It's one of those that like everybody had around and nobody knew why. It's one of those. And I feel like it's also a blockbuster game. It was one that was very frequently rented. But yeah, we'll see if they ever make a return of those. Let's keep it going with some movies and some random facts.
So, with movies, in 2010, Resident Evil Afterlife was released. And then in 2004, Resident Evil Apocalypse was released. And then for random, in 1953, Swanson began selling its first TV dinner. So,
Which I don't know if Swanson was the first TV dinner, but I feel like it might very well be. And sure, why not? I think it's interesting. It's not
I'd say
the
they're the
most
most
fun
well
fact.
known,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. And it's like it's not one that's so recent like a Hungry Man meal or whatever. Like those aren't as classic, as nostalgic as a Swanson meal. So fun stuff. No cryptic critiques tonight, DGC. We will hopefully bring that back next week. We are figuring out how to make that work whenever it comes to having a new guest with us. So that should happen next week because we have a new system there that will work out great next time. With that, we are going to get into our next segment of the show, which my mouse is frozen. There we go. It is upcoming releases. My guest and I are going to talk about 3 things that are coming out in the next week or so for us to share with you. We used to go through literally everything that came out in the next week and realized that that would take forever. So instead, we are just going to talk about 3. So I will let Phoenix start with one of theirs, and then we'll go back and forth.
So for me, the thing that I have at the top of the list is the iPhone 16. I'm not going to get it, but I am excited to see where they take that and how all of that works out. It's going to be interesting to see how sales go, especially with it being as similar as it is to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but with the Apple crowd, me being an Apple fanboy myself, knowing people who buy iPhones, I'm sure they'll sell just fine. So
Sure. Yeah, definitely will. My first one is a movie that I didn't really get excited for until I looked at the cast list. I like horror movies, I like horror stories, but I do think that sometimes they become so tropey that they are boring. And this one, to be honest, feels a little too tropey for me, but I will read it nonetheless. Speak No Evil is releasing this week. When an American family is invited to spend the weekend at the idyllic country estate of a charming British family they befriended on vacation, what begins as a dream holiday soon warps into a snarled psychological nightmare. That sounds pretty basic, pretty standard, but the leading British family patriarch is James McAvoy. And I love everything that James McAvoy is in. So it's going to be great to at least see him be a creepy, murderous, psychological fiend. That should be good at the very least. It's the same reason why I was excited for Longlegs, even though, again, feels very rote, very standard, kind of just horror fare. I love Nick Cage, and so I was totally down for that one nonetheless. But yeah, that's my first one.
yeah, speaking of long legs, I have been seeing long legs memes all over my
All over.
TikTok, and I haven't even seen the movie yet. Uh,
I can almost
I'd
guess which
say
part you've seen.
I'd say "Let Me In Now" is the one thing that keeps popping up, and it's so many memes.
Yep. Yep.
So for my second one, this is actually coming out next month. My last 2 are actually coming out in October because I looked for September releases and there wasn't really anything that just piqued my interest. But next month, and this was just announced a few days ago, I'm fairly sure, Retro Realms is releasing Halloween and Ash vs. Evil Dead, and both of those are 16-bit games. Halloween is a 16-bit action platformer where you play as Michael Myers and go through Haddonfield fighting bosses and other enemies. And then Ash vs. Evil Dead is a pixel art platformer, and you're fighting Deadites and saving the world from the Necronomicon. And that is releasing October 18th. I'm fairly sure it's all consoles as well as PC. So that is
Honestly,
my second one I'm super stoked for because I love Halloween. That is like my favorite horror franchise. And then Ash versus Evil Dead is really cool too. So
I could see both of those. Like, I don't think this is the case, but those would be great, like, mobile games. I would have
yeah.
loved to have gotten those on my phone or like through Netflix or something. That would have been an absolute shoe-in because they are definitely have that
Yeah.
classic feel.
It's interesting that we were talking about nostalgia this week too. And those
Seriously.
are 2 of my biggest things that I'm excited about. So
Very nice. My second is an anime movie that I had not heard about until I was looking up what was happening this week. The Concierge is coming out. Akino is a trainee concierge at the Hokokyu department store, an unusual department store that caters exclusively to animals. Under the watchful eyes of the floor manager and senior concierges, Akino runs around to fulfill the wishes of customers with a myriad of needs and problems in her pursuit to become a full-fledged concierge. And so I was pretty excited about that one. I love all the good anime, and this one does look pretty interesting. I'll also call out another Demon School. There is coming out on the 13th. Is that the game Demon School? Because I didn't realize that was coming out on the 13th. It didn't come up on my list, but I'm super excited for that one. That is a Persona 5-like, or not a Persona 5-like, a Persona 2-like, really. But got that Persona vibe. So very curious to see where that one goes, if that's the same thing that I'm thinking of. All right, on to our third one.
So the third one I'm excited about is another one that's coming out next month, Terrifier 3. I saw the second one, and the first time I watched it, I made it like 45 minutes through and had to turn it off because it is one of the most graphic films that I had ever seen in my life, and I was not prepared for it going in. Finally finished it a few months ago, though. And so with Terrifier 3, Art the Clown is unleashing chaos on the residents of Miles County, but in a different setting. It is actually on Christmas Eve. And that has an October 11th, 2024 release date, and they have already announced a popcorn bucket, and it's Art the Clown's head with a Santa hat. So I'm excited about that too. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with the higher budget that they had, given the amount of time that they had to prepare for Terrifier 2 and that coming out, and then the higher budget with Terrifier 3. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, this is a series that I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's hard to deny it's a good like brand. The branding is good.
The amount of cult following it has gotten and gained the past couple years, I think, is crazy.
Yeah,
so
the only reason I found out about it,
like
I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of the right movie, but the first one is Rainn Wilson, right? And I think that I saw a TikTok clip, if I'm thinking of the right movie, and that was the one that got my attention because he makes a absolutely absurd face. Maybe Rainn Wilson is another one, but nonetheless, he makes this absolutely absurd like clown face. And then the TikTok like ended with like and then something terrible was about to happen. And so I was like, well, I got to know what terrible thing is about to happen. And so then we got into it. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of like even whenever it comes to like Saw and that kind of thing, like the torture porn-esque style horror, I don't get into. It's got a really good lore.
I don't recommend it if you have a weak stomach by any means, because it is a very, very rough film to watch. Like, I can handle gore. I am a massive horror movie fan, and even I had to turn it off the first watch through. So that's full discretion. It's pretty bad.
Absolutely. If you do not like horror, it's not for you. If
Do
you don't
not,
like gore,
no.
it's not for you. It is
Absolutely do not.
The worst of the worst there. I think it really does take the cake as being at the top of the pile, if not the top.
Yeah.
With some of its visceral nature. But yeah, I'm curious. I didn't know it was even happening, but I really had only experienced the first one. I think I read the wiki for the second one because I was curious, but I was like, I don't need more. I'm all good.
It's rough.
Good stuff. My third one is a Mega Man-like game that I have been keeping an eye on for quite a while called Elsie. Elsie is a Technicolor hyperkinetic roguelike action platformer filled with procedurally generated levels, an army of robots to blast through, and a wide scope of items and weaponry to make each run as unique as possible. So think a roguelike Mega Man. Master countless Magitech weapons and abilities in order to survive. I'm pretty excited for this one. It did, full disclosure, the only reason I knew about this one is because of the completionist, Gerard Khalil, who was one of the original backers. And ever since he has had a falling out and really been canceled for the most part for, that's all we'll say about that. They have pretty much distanced themselves completely from him, and I haven't heard any more out of him. And so I was excited about this game since he first told us about it. And I was disappointed whenever all that happened because I was wondering if it was still even going to happen, if this game was going to come out. So I'm glad to see that the team pushed forward and that this game is going to happen and is going to be a thing that exists. So it's good stuff, and I love a good Mega Man-like roguelike game. So should be fun. This one is not boring, Coyote. I will affirm, not boring. Nor would it has its funny moments, but I don't know. But I did. So you make me think, Coyote, of the film I mentioned during my 1001 movies, The Aguirre and The Wrath of God. The blood was so bad. Now, granted, it was 1972, and they only have what they have when they were making movies. But oh boy, it was laughably bad. It was like not even ketchup levels bad.
Yeah, no, I'd say with Terrifier, the amount of detail that they put into it, because I know that they had stopped production during COVID. They picked it back up and had like 3 or 4 years to like finish it and do these excessive details. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it would never actually happen and could never actually happen because it is very over the top. But with how gory and realistic looking they tried to make it with the low budget they had, I'd say they did a fairly decent job with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we're in that spooky season is just about to start. So very good time to start talking about those things. We'll just have to, make those big about those.
yeah.
And especially in the mindset of Checkpoint to do no harm. For some of us, those kind of visceral experiences can harm us mentally. And it's important to be aware of that and to steer clear. What entertains some does not entertain all. And we need to be aware of that in ourselves. And that is a perfectly respectable way to be, and a place to feel, and a way to be honest with yourself. So that's all good here. 2 thumbs up. Love these exciting things. Do let us know what is coming up in your gaming cycle that you are excited for. I'm now putting Demon School up to the top of my list because I didn't realize that was coming out this week. I had it on my wish list, but I had no idea it was coming out so soon. So it will be bumped up pretty close because I've been excited about that one ever since I first played the demo for it. With that, we are going to get into our final segment of our show. Meme of the week. That's right, it's time for Meme of the Week. This week's meme, I think, is once again from Sugar Haiku, who has been killing it this month on memes. So this one, although initially unpopular, Pumpkin went on to be the most successful of the Spice Girls. So a great meme, a great reference. We love the pumpkin spice. It is, like I said, getting close to that spooky season. So this was the one that got the most reacts and love over on our Discord server. As I mentioned earlier, if you are not over on our Discord server, that is the place that you will be able to be considered for our memes and goof. We post one every single week here on TWIG, and normally it is the one in the past week that has gotten the most reactions. So log into our Discord, add your memes, and maybe you will be shouted out next week. With that, we're going to get into the end of our show. Phoenix, is there anything you would like to shout out? Any exciting things going on anywhere that people can find you? Anything that you want to say?
So, yeah, I'm excited for next week. Finally getting a vacation. I've been working my butt off for well over almost 4 months at this point, making money to go on vacation. So I'm excited about that. That's coming up next week. I know I'm on Xbox, same username as Discord. You can find me there. And I'm pretty sure I have my Spotify connected as well. So those are really the only 3 places I show up is Discord, Spotify, and Xbox. So
Very nice. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this show. Folks, this has been TWIG, your weekly, geekly, family-friendly news show delivered live on twitch.tv/checkpointchurch each and every week, keeping your family connected to the world of nerdy news. If you watched this far, you likely enjoyed this one, so remember to give us a 5-star on your podcast app. Click that like button if you're ever on YouTube, and recommend the show to all of your favorite nerds out there. We appreciate everybody that supports us in any way, whether it's with their views or whether it's with sharing our content, whatever it may be. But we want to give an extra special shout out to our subscribers here on our Twitch channel that do give financially to support this ministry to keep it going. So thank you to Trombone Dalek, Tina Christina Pease, Ando Calrissian, DJ Courageous, Lee Animal Art, Nerd Pastor Nate, Twilight 27, Sneaky Pig 633, DGC 121996, The Phoenix 2192, Gobi Church, Perspective, Coyote 42, Mindful Marlena, Sugar Haiku, Buish, Wisen Lemur, Deacon Shannon LS, J and Lean 42, Maybe 30 Bats, Jate Live, and Yakeem 4752. With that, is there TWIG next week? Yes, there should still be TWIG next week. I think we're on cue to have that for pretty much the rest of the month. I will always let you know if TWIG for the following week is canceled. But for now, I think we're good to go. We're going to end this one with our 3 things that we believe to be true about every single one of you out there, because we are really a church. I'm really a pastor, and we really believe these things to be true about everybody. Whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, go to church, don't go to church, hate God, hate church, we still believe them. Number 1, that God loves you, like really, really loves you. Number 2, we love you. We want community with you. That's what we're doing here. That's why we have a news show, and we talk about these things from this perspective. And number 3, that you, yes, you, matter. You are a person of sacred worth. The world's a better place. Why? Because you are in it. All right, folks, thanks again to the Phoenix Chats in the Clap. Appreciate you and your time. And we will catch everybody around the Discord for lunch tomorrow, stream tomorrow morning. We got all sorts of wonderful stuff. Until next time, folks, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.